There are, of course, some broader concepts that can play into climate mitigation and have health co-benefits, like reducing consumption overall. We talked about reducing meat consumption, for example, but reducing traveling, reducing overall consumption of energy with active transportation, overall consumption of goods, buying fewer clothes, using them longer, recycling stuff, and so on, all play into overall mitigation. There is a category mentioned in the book called market forces, which include a few policy tools that I'll show in a minute. So this is an example that many people are what makes them nervous about market forces as a way of mitigating climate change, because the idea is it's the market forces and the technology that created the problem in the first place. Can they be the same sectors that are going to solve the problem? So there is always this tension between environmentalists and market forces. This is from European Economic and Social Committee Employers Group that says, let's make business out of climate action. There you go. That tends to excite some of the environmentalists in the wrong way. Enterprises play a key role in climate change mitigation. This is obvious, and yet it's a question of how to avoid profit motivation being a major goal. For example, the Volkswagen emissions test scandal that led to many excess deaths in Eastern Europe and led to some record billion-dollar fines on Volkswagen shows you how corporations can talk about climate-friendly action and can still try to find ways around them, like cheating on emissions in a computer that's installed in vehicles and so on. Okay, so this union group here says overarching measures should include increasing electrification of society is at the heart of decarbonization and can contribute significantly to reducing emissions, provided that electricity is produced in a low carbon way. Makes sense. Digitalization and the introduction of artificial intelligence are another cross-cutting element of decarbonization. Smart energy grids, smart mobility, smart buildings, and smart communities are implications of this development. The use of Internet of Things and robotics make industrial processes and logistics more efficient, and while digital platforms provide an option for matching the supply and demand of services better, making full use of the opportunities provided by the circular economy and bioeconomy is a third way to combat climate change through improved resource efficiency, replacement of fossil raw materials with bio-based and or recycled ones, and by storing carbon in bioproducts, as well as reducing emissions. Sequestration of carbon dioxide plays an essential role in climate change mitigation. This highlights the significance of sustainable management and use of forests. Kind of motherhood statements, right? So the question then is, how will that be implemented? Immediately it says, to be avoided, climate action by EU enterprises must not be discouraged with taxes or other instruments that cause them an extra burden compared to their competitors outside the EU. Those are key buzzwords in the market forces, where you say taxes and other instruments can kill competition or give undue advantage to competitors and so on, which is true, but that shouldn't be used as a way to circumvent mitigation, actual mitigation. Regulations that hampers innovation. Regulations are always seen as bad by the market forces, but common people need to be protected against corporate greed and environmental degradation by corporations in the name of innovation as well. So here are some general ideas on environmental policy instruments which are market-based. Non-market based are what we already talked about: command and control regulations like environmental regulations, pollution, policing, enforcement of rules, reporting requirements, active green technology support, removal of green tech financial barriers like fossil fuel subsidies, for example, information and voluntary approaches. And under market-based instruments, there are many, but some are, of course, things like carbon taxes, emissions trading. It has been shown to work when done properly. Removal of perverse incentives, again, fossil fuel subsidies come to mind. Liability rules, which market forces, again, don't like to be held liable. But how do you protect the public? Protect the public. This is always a key battle. And deposit refund, which is a particular instrument as well. Okay, so the other thing that's mentioned as well in the book is, of course, geoengineering as a way to mitigate climate. Lots of unintended consequences are possible, and governance issues exist, and just the hubris of humans thinking they can control climate is, of course, always scary as well. But if they are done successfully without unintended consequences, they would, of course, reduce air pollution, water pollution, warming extremes, and so on. And they include things like space mirrors, which would reduce the incoming energy, which can have consequences for crop production, agriculture, and other things. Biochar and Aforestation are much more friendly. Biochar is basically taking things like trees and pyrolyzing them and producing high density carbon that can be spread on soil to increase soil carbon content, which has cascading effects on nutrient uptake, soil structure, soil moisture retention, and so on, and soil erosion reduction. Iron fertilization depends on going to places in the ocean where iron is a limiting nutrient and putting bioavailable iron to increase photosynthesis and carbon uptake. It has been tried, and success is not sure because the carbon that's taken up by photosynthesis has to be exported into the bottom of the ocean to be taken away from the atmosphere, and this is not always guaranteed by iron fertilization. Alkalinity addition, so increasing ocean's alkalinity so that its ability to take up carbon dioxide is not reduced by increased CO2 in the atmosphere. Artificial upwelling is another way to drive nutrients into a lighted zone called the euphotic zone to increase photosynthesis and carbon uptake. Cloud seeding to increase rainfall and do other things like cloud brightening to increase albedo and reflectivity of sunshine. Reflective aerosols in the stratosphere. This will be tried soon, I think, at a small scale. But if you use volcanoes as an analog, then we know that volcanoes have had negative impacts like droughts and crop damages. Okay, radiation management is the broader term for these things. Direct CO2 capture has been tried. Many technologies exist that work, but where to store it is still a problem if it is done at scale. But to do it at scale, to draw down enough carbon dioxide to make a difference, is still got a long way to go. Nonetheless, these are part of the climate mitigation overall and can obviously have lots of health co-benefits. So we will do a last podcast on this chapter and conclude the chapter on climate mitigation and health co-benefits. Okay.